I'm Stephanie Prowl, and welcome to Site Speak. Today, we have a very special guest, Carlos Ortega from Lemartec. Welcome, Carlos.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you for being here. Now, before we get a little bit into your career and everything you do, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Are you from here?
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Miami. Local, yeah. Family from Cuban family, Venezuelan family, a bit of a mix. That's all I got for that.
Are you married?
I am married, actually.
Do you have an amazing wife?
I do have an amazing wife, yes.
Spoiler alert, it's me.
Correct, yeah. She's sitting across from me. Yeah, so.
How about we ask the really important question in Miami, which is, what high school did you go to?
I went to Belen Jesuit Preparatory School. Yeah.
Are you a proud Belen alum?
I am.
He actually met my brother at Belen, and that's how we met each other.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. So was it in your Belen days when you started liking construction, or a little bit earlier?
I would say before, since I was a little kid. I always liked construction.
In what sense? Like, did you play with Legos or?
Actually, maybe I did a lot of Legos always since I was a little boy, building castles and whatever it was, and also doing sand castles and like tunnels in the sand since I was like 5 or 6 years old. So,
sandcastles.
I always
Okay.
liked,
You did tunnels with sandcastles?
well, yes, yeah, I would kind of dig a tunnel through the sand and then leave like a little bridge,
Okay, I didn't know this about you. That's fascinating.
Correct, yeah.
And what else drew you to it? You just love the process of seeing something build?
Yeah, it's kind of a rewarding industry in that sense where you got like a physical manifestation of what you're doing. So you start with nothing, an empty plot of land, and then you end up with a high rise or a stadium or a water treatment plant or whatever it is. But you can see it, it's before your eyes. So that's was always really interesting for me and rewarding.
And that always appealed to you?
Yes.
Did you go into college thinking that you were going to go into the construction space, or?
No, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to the university. I started off as an accountant, actually, an accounting major.
Oh, wow. I'm learning new stuff about you right now, so this is fascinating.
Yeah. But as I took a bunch of classes in accounting, I figured it wasn't exactly for me. I really liked being outside too. So from there, I actually switched to a construction management major.
Okay.
And I really liked that, but I took geology classes while I was in that major, and for whatever reason, I fell in love with the geology program, and I switched majors, and I became a geologist in the university, yeah.
So what university did you go to, so everybody knows?
I went to the University of Florida. Yeah,
Which is
in
unfortunate because it's not the University of Miami, but that's okay.
Well, I guess it is what it is, yeah.
And what about geology? You said you liked being outdoors, but what else about geology kind of drew you to it?
I don't know. There was a lot of things. Like part of it was just the dynamic in the university. I made a lot of friends in the program right off the bat. So maybe that made it a little easier. So that was kind of a fun part of it. But I don't know. It was just a really interesting and fascinating topic of learning how the earth worked. How it was made and how mountains were made and all these different things were really interesting to me. Or just being able to hold a rock that was 1 billion years old was crazy. To even think about that of 1 billion years, is an insane number.
So even in geology, it seems like you really love the process of something being built from scratch and seeing it grow over time.
I guess, yeah. Just in geology, the time scale is way different, but still, yeah, it's fascinating learning how something works and how the processes go. I guess I've always liked that kind of thing.
And when you graduated college with a major in geology, what did you do and what did you expect your career to look like, kind of?
Actually, I had some bad luck. So what I initially thought I was going to do was go into the oil industry more than likely. That was the really popular thing at that time. Okay. And most of my friends, they were graduating and going immediately, moving to Texas and working in the oil industry.
So when you say moving in the oil industry or working in the oil industry, because I honestly have no idea what that means. What does that mean?
So as a geologist, a lot of geologists work for the Exxons of the world in exploration, helping them find oil or mapping out kind of where it's going to be so they know where to install their wells, and where to extract the oil. So
okay.
My friend Bob, for instance, did that for a long time in Canada. So they were working for big oil companies and helping them map out the oil plumes or the oil wells where they should be located.
And didn't you do something in Nevada kind of similar to that?
So yeah, while I was studying at the university, I took a break and I went to work in Nevada for a drilling company that was doing. They did a lot of exploration work in gold mines. So they would take like a bunch of samples like scattered throughout the gold mine to figure out where in the mine you'd have the biggest concentration of gold. Uh, so I was working on those rigs, learning kind of that process of taking samples. So it combined a little bit of my geology in the fact that I was like sampling, but I was also just learning about drilling and the actual like mechanics of that.
Did you like it? Did you enjoy it, or was it not really what you thought it would be?
No, I think it was about what I thought it would be, but it was absolutely brutal work. This is I would work like 14 days on and like 15-hour shifts in the freezing cold. So it was brutal work. Gave me like a really good like work ethic in my life. And really it made me know I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. So
That's an important thing to discover.
I have to focus on using my brain instead of like my back and my muscle to get by. So that was a big part of that.
So what did you do next?
So yeah, so after I left Elko, I went back to Gainesville. I finished my degree in geology, and then I started doing research for the university. As I thought about maybe going into academia at that point, because I had trouble getting work in the oil industry or basically anywhere else because just of the economy at the time.
Right.
I jumped into doing laboratory research. I had a few different professors that had projects going on at the time, and I would figure out how old the rocks were. No.
And after you, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's what I would do. I would they would give me a rock sample, and then I had a bunch of different processes that I would do to find exactly how old they were. Within a certain degree of certainty, I guess.
What else would you do with the rocks? It was just aging them, or?
Yeah, for the most part, that was the main thing I did. You could get different information from the rock depending on like what tests you're running on it. So sometimes the goal is to figure out how old it was, but sometimes like you were trying to figure out like the magnetic properties of the rock, or you were trying to figure out find different things in it that would give you some other indication of like where that rock originated from or what environment caused that rock to be formed. So then you can kind of recreate the past. So that was kind of the idea. There was many different things that you could pull from, or types of like things you can get from a rock sample to give you more information. I guess depending on what your project was for, right?
Right.
But often I had to figure out how old they were. It was kind of one of the first steps. Yeah.
I should just randomly pick a rock one day and ask you how old it is. I realize I've never done that.
Well, my school is not like that, quite like that. Like it was like a multi-week process.
Oh, okay.
I would like break down the rock, kind of turn it into sand, and then I was looking like for a particular type of grain in there that was called the zircon.
Okay.
And
Sounds like a villain. Zircon.
kind of like a diamond. It has similar properties to like a diamond. So it was a very, very tough like sand particle in a sense, or a very tough mineral there. So it wouldn't really break down. So it would hold a lot of information. So you would break down the rock, grind it all up, get it down to like dust and sand, then run it through like a big magnet, or then get rid of all the stuff that was magnetic. And then I had these like series of these like really dense liquids. So it was really strange because it would be like a container. You would think it wouldn't weigh a lot. You would go to pick it up. It was extremely heavy, just like a liquid. So you would put the sample in there, and then my zircons would sink to the bottom and everything else would float. So I would just collect a little bit of sand at the very bottom, and then I would put that, dry it out, look at it under a microscope, and select the grains that I needed to analyze.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
I can't just grab a rock and say it. Then from there, I get the zircons. And I'd put them on this like little plate, and we would blast them with a laser.
Okay.
And then it would go through this mass spectrometer, and
it's a lot more work than I anticipated.
Yeah. Then and only then, it would like give me all this data. I'd put it in a spreadsheet, and it would tell me how old the rock was.
Wow.
So sometimes, it takes a little while.
So I know after research you got into quality control, and there's kind of a little bit of a segue between, testing rocks to kind of quality control and construction. How did you really make that segue?
So after I was doing the research and I finished my geology degree, I was looking into doing like a master's program in geotech, in like geotechnical engineering, which was going to combine my geology with some engineering. So I started doing some courses and preparing to go to grad school. And then at the same time, one of my old friends from the university called me. He was working at a geotechnical engineering firm in Tampa, and they needed some help. And he knew I was like interested in that industry. So he said, yeah, come on down, interview, check it out, check out our laboratory. I can tell you about what we do. And we'll go from there. So yeah, I went in, I did the interview. I ended up really liking the owner and the company and what they did. So instead of going to grad school, I started working.
And what does quality control? I mean, obviously it's in the name, but when it comes to construction specifically and taking in your geology background, what quality are you controlling?
So these types of firms are kind of structured in a way where they have like a geotechnical engineering group. They'll have a quality control and like materials testing group, and they'll have like an environmental group. And then I was kind of helping within the geotech department to kind of monitor drilling and taking samples. And then on the quality control testing side, I started as a field technician. I would go to projects and take samples of construction materials. So if there was a concrete pour for a building, I would go and I would take samples periodically throughout the entire day, cast them into these concrete cylinders, pick them up the next day, hold them in our laboratory for, different time, maybe 7 days, 14 days, 28 days. And at that point, we would have this like compression machine that would crush the cylinder, and it would let us know the strength of the concrete. And then at that point, we can report back to the contractor, the developer, whoever had hired us, to let them know, hey, the work that was done that day, followed all the specifications and the concrete is good. If there's an issue with it, if it didn't meet the strength, then we would give a recommendation just the same. Hey, the concrete poured in this area had issues. It was deficient. It wasn't as strong as it should be. And then we need to have a further investigation.
How do you fix that?
Yeah, that's a problem. Because assuming the exact area where it is, you can go and do it. Normally, the first thing is we'll do a further investigation. So we'll go and maybe take an in-place core of that wall or whatever that structure is, and then test the core. Because maybe there was an issue, with the sampling, or maybe there was some other problem. Like for whatever reason, the cylinders didn't come out well, and it wasn't indicative of what happened there. So we want to rule that out. So you'll go and you'll take a sample directly from the in-place work and test that. And then assuming that is okay or not, if it's not, then we need to see how weak is this concrete, and get an engineering recommendation from the structural engineer more than likely, and explain, look, this area required 8,000 PSI. We're only reaching 6,000. Is that sufficient, in your design to kind of, for this project, for it to be safe? And if not, we need to remove that wall. So
safety
the worst
first.
case, you demolish and redo the work.
But that's absolutely worst case scenario. I assume that's the worst news you can deliver.
Yeah, it's extra cost for everyone involved.
Right.
Maybe it's tough to determine exactly who was at fault. Maybe it was the concrete provider didn't provide good concrete, so you may pursue that avenue and try and recover the cost from them. But yeah, it's tough. So you just kind of got to deal with it and do what's going to be safe for your building and what the engineer recommends.
Did you find that rewarding in the development process and construction, or what did you enjoy the experience overall doing quality control?
Of quality control, there were some things that were rewarding. I got to see a lot of different projects and deal with a lot of different personalities and people. But being a consultant was tough. I had maybe 100 projects on any given month.
I remember those days.
Yeah, I had a lot of the DOT transportation work, and that would happen a lot at night. So you would have work happening at 3 or 4 in the morning, and that was tough to keep up with. Because I would get a lot of calls in the middle of the night.
No one likes waking up in the middle of the night.
No, definitely not. But I ended up learning a lot from that experience. But I did learn, that wasn't exactly the industry that I wanted to focus in for the rest of my life.
What did you learn? How did you get closer to realizing what you wanted to do for the rest of your life through that experience?
Well, so within that industry, I moved up. I started as that field technician, doing all the field sampling, and eventually I became like a project manager, overseeing different projects, and a quality control manager overseeing like larger DOT projects. And then I eventually oversaw a department doing all the construction services here in Miami. And there I learned a lot about the business side and the marketing side of the business, and how the contracts worked, and the economics of the business. So the more
You're a
I learned,
numbers guy.
the more I learned, I realized it was a tough industry to succeed in. You needed to be really, really good at it. I guess that's in many industries, but I determined, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze for me on that one.
You just didn't enjoy it.
Correct. Yeah, So it wasn't quite for me, but there was a lot of parts of the job that I did like. So I really liked doing the forecast. I really liked planning out the cost of the project. How was going to be the cash flow for my department? Those types of things.
And so then that helped you lead into kind of your next career path?
Correct. So I suffered a bit of burnout there towards the end of my life in quality control, and I was looking to pivot into something else. I still wanted to be in construction. So I started looking into different possibilities to work directly for a GC, for a contractor in some capacity. I was thinking either to be, go into field management as a project manager, or maybe be more behind the scenes, like in pre-con estimating type thing. But I ended up discovering a role. It was a project control engineer.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So project controls ends up being a bit of a liaison between your field team and your office and your corporate team. And they help to implement the controls in the project. Your cost controls and your scheduling controls. So maintenance of schedule, cost management, budget management.
So the very simple task of keeping a project on budget and on time.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, at least tracking those things. It's a huge team effort in keeping all those things on track and under cost. But I'm there to make sure that everything's being reported correctly, and I'm giving the team enough anticipation or heads up to come up with solutions. Because in construction, we always have problems. Every day there's something new pops up that wasn't planned necessarily, so we need to pivot. That's where you got to get all the brains together and come up with contingencies and figure out alternate strategies to get it done.
So what's an example of kind of one of those moments where you're working on a project and you kind of have to pivot and come up with something on the fly? What's an example of that?
Last year, I was working on a project in Fort Lauderdale. It was called War Memorial. It was an auditorium that we were doing next to the Florida Panthers practice facility. And it was, an auditorium done, I think it was done in the 50s, so it was an older building and needed to be completely remodeled. We were adding a second story. So as the project was evolving, we were starting to do the demo work on the inside. And then we realized there was like a 70-foot like support column that weighed, I can't remember it, tons and tons and tons, that went right across the front of the stage, of the concert stage. And that column we determined had to be removed, but it was supporting the entire roof of the entire structure.
A little bit important.
So we couldn't just like cut it,
Right.
So, we had to get all the engineers involved, the structural engineering team, to come up with a plan to remediate this. Ultimately, it needed to come out in some way. So they came up with a shoring plan to kind of bring in these like poles and reinforce the building, like the roof, and like hydraulic jacks to hold up, to support all of the weight of the roof and not put it on the beam. And then we went in and started cutting out little pieces of the beam. It had to be sections because it weighed so much. We couldn't cut out the entire thing at once, so it would be 2 or 3 foot sections, slowly removing that beam, and then reinforcing it with the new solution that we had, and then eventually taking all that shoring. And the roof did not collapse after that, so it was a huge success.
That's very important.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
But it was very, a costly, unforeseen type thing that we, that kind of thing happens. Even with all the planning and foresight that you put into a project, once you get in there, you'll start to find things you just didn't know. It was impossible to know.
And is that kind of the part that you find exciting? I mean, I'm sure it brings with it its many stresses, like what you just described, but I'm sure there's a part of it that makes it extra rewarding.
For sure. It makes the job really interesting because you never know. Every day is going to be something, something you never even heard of. And then it's, all right, let's get together, figure out what's the solution here. How can we resequence, what we're doing here to still finish at the same time and with the same cost, not have an extra cost impact.
And when I first, heard about cost control, I kind of just picture someone behind a computer on an Excel spreadsheet. And it's really not that. Like you've just described, you're kind of working with all different aspects of the project. Can you kind of describe that? What's your day-to-day like?
So yeah, there is an aspect of it where I'm behind the computer with a spreadsheet, no doubt, which I'm good at too. But I need to figure out the information that's going to feed into those spreadsheets, right? So to bring the most value to the project, I need to collaborate with all the team members, from the very bottom with our laborers or our assistant superintendents, the guys that are going to be in the field and really monitoring the work. I need to know what's going on. So I need to be able to meet with them and get information from them to update the schedule and figure out where we're at. And same, I'll also meet with the senior project managers, so the executives. And then I need to be able to digest all this information I'm getting to give to the vice president or the president of the company or for our shareholders, as we're a publicly traded company. So we have a lot of reporting responsibilities.
And just remind me again, what company do you work for?
I work for Lemartec. It's a Mastec company.
And Mastec is what?
Well, it's a it's a large infrastructure contractor and developer. They do power line work. They do stadium work. We do sports facilities, government work. So all kinds of construction projects and infrastructure work.
And how about government work? I'm sure that brings kind of its own entire bag of problems or things that are specific to it.
Sure thing. Different projects and different clients will have different requirements. And sure enough, doing public sector work comes with a lot of, I'd say maybe some bureaucracy or, certain paperwork and things that need to be done.
Getting permits and stuff like that, or?
Sure, it could be, from a permitting standpoint. But no, just different entities have different rules on how to do things. They'll have, the airport may have a massive spec book and you need to follow all their different specifications. And for good reason, because it's an airport. So you have a lot of rules and things to follow. So
how do all those constraints kind of play into your role?
I need to understand the mechanisms of how the contracts work. How the cash is going to flow. When are we going to get paid for certain things? When are we going to have to pay things out? So that's one of my main responsibilities is making sure that we're going to be in a good spot as a company always. So I need to do a lot of work on the front end, on the planning side, on the budgeting side, and what I'm presenting to that owner. So once my cost starts hitting, I'm more than enough covered on the money that I'm going to receive from my client.
Right. And the more you save, I'm sure the more exciting it is.
Oh, correct. Yeah, that's the biggest victory. My nightmare is going to my owner or to my company and asking for more money. So
that doesn't happen often, though.
No. It's never. So we always have to find ways, to make more money, to save, to come up with value ideas, value engineering solutions, and get creative to do things a little bit more efficiently and at the best cost possible.
And how, in your cost control and working this part of the industry, do you feel like you've taken in some of your geology and your quality control knowledge into this as well? Has it played a role at all, or has it been a complete shift?
No. I feel everything kind of built to where I am today. So even though I'm not figuring out how old rocks are anymore, I'm still using kind of like the analytical brain, that got me to that point. And I'm still using spreadsheets at the end of the day to figure things out once I gather all the information. So I'm still kind of doing the same thing I used to do back then. But yeah, it all built and it kind of gave me sort of a love for also being outside. So I'm always around these projects. So
you like walking the projects?
I do love being in the projects because I'm not, like I said, I started as an accountant in college and I didn't like it. So I can't just always be inside. So for me, it was extremely rewarding where I'm in a project where I'm kind of like an accountant, but I'm getting to walk the job sites, seeing what's going on, talking to the people on the job sites, figuring out, what's going on, seeing the issues that we're having. Oh, we're having issue dewatering this hole. What's the solution for this? What's going to be the cost impact? Where can we save in another part to make up for that deficiency? So yeah, it's always kind of working that game.
Now, I know you've also done multifamily projects and cost control. Can you talk a little bit more about that? It seems like a huge shift from what you're doing now. It's what you did previously, and I'm just curious.
So sure. When I first started in cost control, I was working for a multifamily housing developer. We were vertically integrated, which means we were like an owner, developer, GC, and we would operate the properties after we finished building them.
So an all-in-one.
An all-in-one, exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of a full turnkey. We would buy the land, prospect it, design the project, bid it out, and to subcontractors, and we would self-perform some of the work ourselves, and stabilize the property. Then either keep it as a property that we would rent out, or sell the property into another developer that was going to then start maintaining it.
What kind of issues would arise in that context? Because I'm assuming very different than kind of these big, huge projects.
Well, yes and no. A lot of them were similar problems, that we're going to face anywhere in construction. So at that time, it was like 2020. It was COVID. So the construction industry faced a lot of difficulties in supply chain issues, getting materials. We were getting a lot of cost escalation. So I was pricing jobs a certain way maybe before the pandemic, and then all of a sudden those jobs were no longer achievable at those same costs. Our cost for wood or drywall or steel went up dramatically.
Made your job harder.
Yeah, it was all the margins shrunk, so projects that were once you were able to do, you were no longer able to do. So that was a huge challenge. I guess a challenge I had there is we would self-perform some of the work. We would do the concrete shell work. We would do our own drywall work. We were doing our own plumbing work. And you take on more liability when you're doing self-performing the work versus getting a subcontractor to do it. I guess the idea in self-performing it is that we keep it all on our side, and you get the margins and the profits all on your side.
But the downside?
You have risk. If the price of the materials goes up, you're the one that's responsible for it. If you're not able to supply the labor, you can't find the skilled people to do the work, it's your fault. So you need to be ready to do that kind of thing. And we had some successes and some failures, so it was a good learning experience.
And how have you taken that now into your role in kind of doing bigger projects, like how you were just talking about the Panthers facility and also just grander scale?
I guess a big thing that it taught me is to always think outside of the box. So, even maybe the easiest thing is to go out to market and get a subcontractor, but maybe the only way to do the project is to go a different way and do a piecemeal, and we'll buy the materials ourselves and we'll subcontract some labor, and then you can make a project happen that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to do. So it gave me a good sense of, thinking outside the box and coming up with different solutions to achieve a project.
We were talking about multifamily and kind of now transitioning to sports. You talked about government work. I know that Lemartec also does a lot of transportation work. I mean, that oversects with the government work, obviously, but can you talk a little bit about that?
So we've been involved in some transportation projects. I think, last year or a couple years back, we did a Bright Line project in Aventura, so a rail station. And also, we've done similar type projects in other parts of the country and in the Caribbean. Just like similar to these airport jobs and the port jobs, and there comes a sense of bureaucracy with these types of projects, but they're rewarding nonetheless, and you're providing an important infrastructure improvement to a region, which is rewarding in and of itself, I guess. It's rewarding. So it's cool doing interesting projects that are going to be impactful in the region.
It sounds like you get a lot of fulfillment from a lot of different aspects of your job, but what would you say, I guess to what you were just speaking to, what is the most rewarding, just kind of seeing the project built at the end of the day?
I guess Yeah, I would say the most rewarding thing is completing a successful project. So seeing all the work that the team put together, throughout that year, there was multiple years, and going through all those ups and downs and struggles and times when it seemed the project was not going to be achievable, but we got together and we came up with creative solutions to get it done. That's what it becomes the most rewarding. So yeah, finishing a job, and it being, by our metrics of success, on time and on budget.
That's awesome. And you've had, as we've talked about, kind of a unique journey to get to where you are today. Any regrets? Would you do it all over again? Still major in geology?
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't change anything because it got me to where I am today in a role that I'm excited to do. I'm really happy to go to the projects every day or to the office every day, and I work with really interesting people are smart and excellent at what they do. So no, I wouldn't change it just because it got me to where I am today.
Right.
Had I known that I would have wanted to be a project cost analyst right up front, who knows? Maybe I could have studied something maybe more specific for that, but then maybe I wouldn't be as well rounded in different topics in the industry. So
We have that in common. We both had career changes that have definitely worked out for the best.
yeah, sometimes you just have to follow your dreams.
Exactly. So that's what I was going to say, kind of in terms of encouragement for anybody that's out there and maybe either is kind of stuck in what they want to do, or, they've always dreamt about construction and don't know where to start or don't want to take the leap. What kind of advice do you have for them?
Well, I would say that you have to trust yourself, and it's kind of cliche, but follow your gut. If you're not comfortable in a situation, work towards getting out of it. As crazy as that sounds, like think about the things that you do enjoy doing, and try and find a job that kind of focuses on those things. I guess that's easy to say, but it worked out for me. You have to try different things, not be scared to throw yourself into that.
Just will and grit.
Correct. And sometimes be willing to grind and do that work at the beginning to learn and absorb as much information as possible. That way you could advance as quickly as possible, to be honest. So the more of an asset you could be and the more information that you have, the better you can help out your company, and at the same time, you'll be happy doing it. So, yeah.
I think that's great advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up today? Any last words of cost control wisdom that you'd like to?
That's it. No, I can't think of any last words of cost control wisdom. But yeah, I like doing it. It's an interesting role that not many people know about.
And central to the construction process.
And it is, yeah. It ends up being a really valuable asset to the field team, and at the same time, the people in the company and at the corporate level. So, we end up providing good value and helping make sure, financially and time-wise, our project is going to be on track, and we're going to be covered. And then we leave the field guys to be able to manage the issues in the field and come up with those creative solutions to solve problems out there.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Even as your wife, I've learned so much that you do that I didn't really know. So it was fascinating. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me.
Of course.
It was awesome.
Thank you for joining us today on Site Speak. I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned something new. Make sure that you follow us on all our socials, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify. See you next time.